So we're gonna do a really short stream tonight. Wrap up some odds and ends that we've been working on. Also, kind of wanted to show what we had. I worked on some of this off stream after last night, and cleaned up quite a few things and found some pretty awesome stuff. So we'll go through that. Um, Let me open up the pull request real quick. So the biggest thing I found last night was I was looking for a way to use connects to join tables together that have common field names and have them not overlap. Because on a normal SQL query, whenever you do that, unless you alias like all of the fields, um, they overlap and they'll overwrite one another. So there is an option you can pass to the connects query builder that ends up getting passed down to MySQL 2, the node package. But what this does is if you had a join result come back where each record would basically be any fields that clobbered one another, would overlap, this nest tables instead has the result come back as an object where the keys are the table names, and they point to objects that are the fields from that table. So it's really convenient. Um, so one of the things I did was first use that, but then as I went through the message model, I saw quite a bit of duplication in how we were kind of creating the query builder, and I went ahead and did a refactor inside of here, that I think I'm going to make in the other models as well. But we basically end up with a pseudo private fetch method, which is really there to give you like an initial query builder that's configured to query from the table your model is pointed at, but also to go ahead and pull in related data from your relationships or whatever. So this is going to have a relation to users and channels. And then we go ahead and tack that options thing on there. So this works very similar to like the query. I think we made a query function in the channel method. We had a query function last night in the messages or the message model, where it accepts a callback that a consumer would use to further constrain this query builder. So we call the callback to apply whatever they're going to apply and then return it out the back of the fetch. So filter right now is kind of a public proxy on top of that also, like, this function will return query builder and then you can grab records off of it. This function actually goes ahead and formats that, or wraps it in messages, so it returns a message instance. So now, if I go look at some of the other functions, they're cleaned up quite a bit. It's like, fetch. If I'm finding my RID, I'd use my low-level fetch method, and then I constrain it by RID. If I'm fetching by, if I want to do a fetch by ID, then I would do the same thing. I just say messages.id. The last thing that I think is kind of neat is now you see here a record. The fields, we didn't have this messages, users, channels, whatever. It was just record.id, record.rid, and we had to alias things to, like, if I wanted the say channels ID, users ID, and messages ID, I would have had to alias, like, do explicit selects and alias each one of those to, like, messages underscore ID, users underscore ID. So instead, my record comes back as an object like this, and this is so useful. In fact, I've just stored it as a private instance variable on the message object. So that's where I left things. I think all of this mostly stayed the same. Or no, see here, this is where this record object kind of comes in handy. Since this username is already on that user's related record that we tack on, I have access to it inside of the 2JSON. This got me thinking a little bit. We waffled quite a bit yesterday on what really is like a constructor variable or whatever. And usually what I've done, if I'm working in like a CQRS database or a CQRS application where I have a separate read and write model, it gets a lot easier because the write model constructor is really there to initialize an object so that it's immediately valid. So you can't have an invalid or an object that doesn't meet its invariance or fulfill its invariance. On the read side, it doesn't matter. Like, you just go grab any active record or whatever. You can just make raw database queries and it's all good. So for this, I'm kind of thinking about trending, starting to push all of these models back towards, okay, my constructor is going to be all the things that are required to implement things like permissions checks or just business rules in general. It'd probably be, at the very least, like the ID. I don't even know that we need the RID so much, but maybe. But with that ID, I can get all the additional information, store it on that underbar underscore record. Now, so then this model would generally be focused on writes. My reads could all come from this 2JSON method. So you could think of this as almost like a mini read model, a mini read-oriented presentation of a message. And then everything else is more or less private. So what that would mean is, like, outside of message, I would never access these instance properties, or we try not to as much as possible. So that's the thought right now. I haven't really landed any particular way, and ultimately, again, like we said yesterday, it doesn't matter what we do. It's just interesting to think about these things, or I find it interesting to think about them. Something else we did after the stream. If you notice, and this code's actually broken right now, so I need to go revert this, or at least double check that it's not broken. But we've been having to do this, like, channel to JSON when we send our responses, rather than this is what we want to be able to do. And the assumption is that whenever this fires, JSON stringify ultimately ends up getting called on this. I went and traced through Express and found the implementation of this method, and it does in fact get passed through JSON stringify, so we should be able to do this. What's actually happening is that the validator, the Express OpenAPI validator, is putting the middleware that validates requests ahead of the middleware that processes the operation handler, which is this controller method. So you end up with something, it's basically validating before that stringify can run. I went and locally patched the library and flipped them, and it just started working. So we've sent a pull request to that project. This guy's pretty on top of the project, so I fully expect to get, in a couple days or whatever, a message back. I need to go write a test for this, actually. That would make things even easier for him, so I might do that tomorrow at some point. But anyway, I think that was the big parts. I did find we struggled for 10 or 15 minutes trying to find a library for validating whether a string is base 64 encoded or not. And I was able to go find one. There's a package called Validator that has a whole set of validation, like assertions on it, which a lot of them I think we'll find useful later. So I went ahead and pulled that in, and then it looks kind of like this. So here we're doing kind of a request side, make sure this is base 64 encoded. if we had the ability in our Open API spec to be able to say, yes, a string value, and then throw a format on there of base64, then we would do that instead. We wouldn't even be talking about this library. So yeah, like some of this stuff kind of changed up a little bit, structure-wise and like code organization-wise, and it looks a little bit better in my opinion. But anyway, so let's go look at project work for tonight. And I think some of this we've already done, so I just need to update the Kanban. So find a way of validating input. That's done. We could implement this tonight. I do want to do this tonight. Can do this tonight. We can go over this tonight. It's pretty quick. And we can go ahead and set up our edit function, I think. Okay. So if we wanted to implement this, channel owners can delete a message. We'll go over to messages. We've already got a check here for the whatchamacallit. This says only the owner of the message can delete the message, or the author of the message can delete the message. So what we'll want, we can basically have this, or is owner of channel. Right. So we had said before, like this right here is more like it should be baked into this delete function or whatever. And then you would pass in like something, you'd inject something about the current user. So it'd probably inject the user ID or whatever. For right now, we're going to leave this here and kind of just get this out of our system. But yeah, so we've got this message and we should be able to get what channel it's in. So if I wanted to grab, I need to figure out the channel owner. Do channel find by ID, and that would be message dot channel ID. Yeah. And so we can go this route. We know we're going to end up putting this in here, and it's almost like a signal to me that like we should just go ahead and do the refactor. But we could also say like, remember on this message we've got the full record or whatever there. So we could pull like owner ID off of that channel. So let's be bad real quick and do that. So if I wanted to say owner ID, we'll say channel owner ID equals message record channels owner ID, right? And now I could do a test, say, let's see, like, see if I can rewrite this. So you have basically kind of the same check, but with this new channel owner ID. So let's say if this array does not include the current user ID, then will fail. Only author or owner of channel. Say, or channel owner. Right? So this should work. Now this is a big no-no. Big no-no. but this should be in the model anyway. So we'll move it later. So let's get our dev server started and get Insomnia pulled up. And we're gonna have to kind of play around a little bit. So we've got over here, let me list all the channels. Oh, we gotta log in first. I don't think we list the owners yet, which is unfortunate, but I think the owner of all of these should be this whack user. So that if I come over here and I say, okay, I'm a normal user, I log in, and now I get all channels, and I join whack dev, right? First, I should now see that in my list of joined channels, and I do. But more importantly, I should be able to send a message there. So let's send this. It's like a hello world something or other. So now that's there. We can list all messages. And we'll see now we've got these two messages. They're the same, but one is in the channel we care about. So which is this one. So author's the username. Whack should be the owner of this channel. So let me do something like this, where let's take this out temporarily. We'll become whack again, and then we'll go back over to that. Install messages. And we'll try to delete that message. We should get an error. So we get message not found. Message by RID. Set a breakpoint and see kind of what happens here. Rec. Params ID is there. Let's hop in. RID. Select from messages. Not scroll this. Say SQL. Okay. Where messages RID is my placeholder. Alright, so why doesn't that return a value? Let's go open up our database. Sure enough, it's not in there. I must have copy pasted something incorrectly, or oh, you know what? I copied the channel name. I meant to copy the message ID. So that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that's what that is. Cool. This is why I shouldn't be doing this at 1:20 in the morning. Should have just gone to bed. Okay, so we've got that. Let's add this channel owner back up in here. And now we should be able to delete it. And we can. And we see that it's gone. So this works. Like I said, I think this should be refactored into the delete method. So let's do that real quick. So what we'll do first is we'll pop over here to delete, and we'll expect it to pass in a user ID, right? So this would be like current user ID. And here we can pass in res.locals.uid. And I think we should be able to like just move this over. So we'll do some guards at the beginning that implement our business logic. So this will be this, right? Can probably just inline this. It reads like bullshit, but something else you could, that's pretty common to do, is you could do something like if allowed to delete current user ID and implement it like that, and have like a little private method down here that is that. I don't, in this case, I wouldn't care, because like this probably isn't going to change again until we implement like a more robust permissions model on top of Castle. So, I mean, maybe it reads better. I don't know. I'm gonna move this back just to keep it simple. All right, so I do need to update this there. I'll tell you what, like, how will we do this? I'll just say, the current user ID. All right, so now if I go back over to Insomnia and make a new user, I think we already have like a admin that it's called admin, but it doesn't really have any powers at all. So we'll list all messages. That's gone. We'll try to delete this one. And we get our fail. But if I become whack again, I should be able to delete that. And we can. So that's cool. I call that good enough. So now channel owner is going to load this. And only the author. Oh, this is edit. Okay. Let's implement that next. So I think we had said we were only going to support updating the body of the message for right now. So, so this is actually already written. We're good here. Let's see. Well, just noticed something, which I don't know if I'm going to care too much about. When this runs, we technically should fetch again. Or I guess filter. Mainly because I want this record to stay up to date with the instance variables on here. But that's just like OCD talking. I mean, like, for all intents and purposes, this is good enough because this is really the only state that matters right now. But like I was saying earlier in the stream, we may end up getting rid of this as a property altogether because it's more of a read concern. If we ever had like some kind of constraint on max size of body or whatever, then it'd be like, okay, it's more important to track that now for implementing like an invariant on that. But I don't really have any intention of limiting chat message size. I think it'll lead to some hilarious things. So we've got our update method already. We just need to implement this controller. So the first thing, we need to go double check that this is actually ready to go in our spec. Let's see. Something whack. Alright, so this is going to be a put to a message. It accepts a message and returns a message. Oh, I found something else that I guess I probably already should have known, but like when we were talking about things like, you know, that put request technically doesn't, like, you don't, maybe you don't know the ID, or it'd be more like when you're creating a message, you don't know what the ID is. And this author username isn't user controllable, really. It's based on whoever's logged in to create the message, because we're never going to allow folks to create messages on others' behalves or send messages as someone else. These created at and update fields also aren't user controllable. They come from the database, or this updated at changes whenever we make a change to the message. So the only things the user should control are these two properties currently. Well, I found there's a way to specify whether these are read-only, read-write, or write-only. And the Express Open API Validator package honors that on those specific requests. So like on a put or whatever, if it's marked read-only, then these won't be required even though they're marked required. That makes sense. So I went ahead and flagged, like, set our message up like this. I think I need to, you know, maybe do something similar here. Connect this like a read-only type thing. Anyway, okay, Open API is good. We're going to go to messages controller, update function. Here we are. So we'll nab this real quick just to get a message instance. Find by rid, and then we are going to need to do the same validation on the body here to make sure it's still base64 encoded. And then we can call await message, the update rec.body.body, and we will return message to JSON. I'm going to go ahead and put all these functions back in because I'm no longer on my fork of Express Open API Validator, so we need these in there. And we'll do the same thing for our other controllers where I remove them. Right. And then this one, same thing is over here. All right. And I think I also need to turn on validated responses again. Okay, so I did that already. So let's just double check. Messages to JSON is on a function, so I messed that up. I need a map here. Cool. So we'll come back in here, send a message, list all messages, show a message, and delete a message, and list all messages. Nothing there. Cool. So back to our body. So this should already work. So let's come back in here. We'll send a message, and we'll grab. Let's see. this is one. This is one where it's like it should be writable once, and then you shouldn't be able to change it again. So I guess that type of thing we won't be able to specify in the spec. It will just, we're already kind of going to do it, but we'll just drop. They could send like, I'm going to update the channel to whatever I want, and we just drop it on the floor and don't do it. That's probably better than like throwing an error message or something like that. So here, let's make our new message. Grab the ID. And now, let's see, we'll duplicate this. We'll say update body. Message body. Right. So this will be a put request to there. The body will be nice and just say it's this, and we just need some base64 text. So updated message. So the first thing's going to be, let me set this to 123, which will be invalid, and see what it does. So request body should have required property channel. Awesome. We'll come back to that. You shouldn't have to do that. It's kind of annoying. And this should be a string, so we'll say 123. All right, so message body must be base64 encoded. So we will do that. All right, whack.message does not exist. So we probably just need to update our query that we're doing down here. Yeah, this is messages, not what I put. Let's try one more time. I also kind of want to come back into the database and look at our updated time and make sure that that changes. So like these will always be the same whenever the message is created, but we should see that the updated at bumps up whenever we do this edit, right? So now if I query again, it looks like the body didn't change, but the updated at did. And look at this. So this is a typo. We were setting the body to what it was already. So that's why it was doing that. So let's try again. So now the body obviously did change. This went up again. So we're in good shape there. We can edit the body of a message. We need to put a check in that only the author can do this. So this is going to be very similar to this. We're also not going to allow channel owners to edit. Only the author will be able to edit their messages. And we'll have to change the signature of this to pass in like the current user. So if this author ID is not equal to UID, we'll give only the author of a message can delete it as an error message. So then we'll come back over here and we'll pass in res.locals.uid. Edit it. Right. So now let's go back over and we'll change users real quick and verify this. So our ID is here. Let's log in as admin. We'll log in as user. I want to profile and figure out why that's going so slowly. Okay, so we're getting at 500. We'll have to come back through and like I want to fix the status codes on a lot of this stuff. Like this should be a 403. And all that really means is that when we throw here, we either have to make an instance of this error and then tack a status property on it. That's one way. We can make custom errors, which we can make like an HTTP error that you gave a status code and a message. That'd probably be fair. The other way we can do it, which I'm gonna do right now, is just kind of throw an object. So we could say something like this, and that'll do the same thing. So now if I come back and do this, I'll have an updated status code right there. So theoretically, you should do this everywhere. As I'm saying theoretically, I'm doing it. But I do think I want to make an HTTP error at some point. I just try to, I don't know, I shy away from making custom errors a lot of the time. So like this would be the other thing that kind of I've grown to just not give a shit anymore, but something that would have bugged, 8 year ago me is the fact that inside of my awesome pure model is a HTTP concern that there's a status code in here. I just can't care enough anymore. What I would do like years ago is you'd end up writing like these domain exceptions, and then based on the type of domain exception or the subclass of the exception, you would wrap that in an HTTP exception at the controller layer. And it just led to like lasagna that was not making anybody money for sure. And it wasn't any more maintainable. At least that wasn't my experience with it. So kind of have quickly come to, appreciate simple code without a whole lot of moving parts. But there is kind of a balance, especially when you're talking, onboarding new people or talking, like mentoring folks, and saying that, and then not having that come out as, oh, I don't give a shit about, clean code or code quality or any of that. So, so this would be a 400. And I swear, this is the last one I'm gonna do. We'll make a task to just kind of address this. Address error, thrown errors in controllers and models to include status code. So we'll come back to that. So we've done this. These two are kind of obvious, and we'll hit them whenever we start actually working on the front end. So I'm not even going to carve these off onto new stories in the stack, because that'll, when I do grooming to like figure out what we're going to do after we make our like fake front end and focus on visually copying Slack, is going to come okay, now we have to hook all this stuff together. And when you go to query the messages API for the first time and catch up or do like an infinite scroll backwards, we're going to have to build some cursor based pagination. So this will be, this will get taken care of then. And this refresh channel stuff will be like, yeah, we'll do that in the beginning. We'll set like a little poll that comes up, but the moment we implement WebSockets, that goes away automatically. So we'll get there. So at this point, we're done with our messages API, at least for now. Say wrap up messages API for now. Cannot type. All right. Make that. All right. Pull request is made. Now let's go through here and play with this stuff. Let's do the signed cookie first. So we have an auth controller that is setting our cookie. And we want to do, this is an unsigned cookie currently. So if we go look, stoplight. If we look at Insomnia, basically anything we do, we should have this cookie here that has the token in kind of plain text or whatever. So this token itself, it's a Passetto token, and it's already signed by a key that we control. So, you know, someone could futz around with this, but the moment they do, this is an invalid Passetto token. So by implementing signed cookies on top of this, it's almost a little redundant, but it would prevent kind of playing around with some of these other properties or whatever by hand. So that's kind of the reason to do it. Really, the only reason I'm doing this is really just to have an example of where we set up signed cookies through Express for like education. So let's go Google Express signed cookies. Just go to the Express docs. I'm pretty sure that's there. We end up using, like, I think it's Cookie Parser we end up using. And we already have it pulled in. I'm pretty sure we literally pass, like, my secret password. And as soon as you do this and you set your secret, or set the cookie to be signed, it's immediately available on signed cookies. So, but I do want to link to that. So I actually think this might only handle the case where it's basically going to parse a signed cookie using the secret. So we still need to figure out express res dot cookie. Okay. So we do use cookie parser. So let's add a config here. And we'll say cookies secret. And this will be set to cookie secret, right? Cookies. And I'm not going to set a default. So now we go into .imExample. We'll throw that in there with no value, and our .env, and random password generator. Sure. Nope. This looks sketchy as shit. All right. So now back over here, have we pulled in config yet? We haven't. Let's do that. Config, cookie, secret. All right. So now we can do sign cookies and all that'll work. So let's pop over to off, and here we'll go ahead and sign is true. I'm wondering, it didn't autocomplete that, so my mind's going towards maybe we're missing a type definition or whatever. It'll still work without it, but want to have that autocomplete. Yeah, you didn't, but that's okay. Yeah. Okay. So that's that. In our, we got bearer auth. This is kind of the middleware thing where we are validating the Paceto token. This is something else I'd like to take to that Express Open API package. Is there isn't like a way to register middleware that run on every request inside of the request and response validation. So it's almost like I want to inject my own middleware somewhere in that stack. Which they may not do, because if you think about it, if they want to control both sides of that middleware stack, why would they allow developers to inject whatever they want and change things around in a way that might break the library? But so now if I come back in here, and let's clear this cookie and then log in again. So the first thing I notice is that this token value changed. It looks signed now, but this one shouldn't be. This should be just the straight up Paceto token. Oh wait, no, this is the cookie. There we go. Okay, there's JSON payload. JSON payload is still fine. So this is signed now. So if we go back and use any of these protected, I should get a breakpoint here, and we can go look at the request, right? So scroll down a bit. There. So rec.cookies isn't there anymore. Oh wait, no, it is. It's just empty. But if we go down to sign cookies, there's our token. So you literally just do this number and everything works fine. Works the exact same way as far as the code we write. So that's signed cookies. There isn't a whole lot to it. You just have to remember, if you set a cookie that's not signed, it's available in cookies. If you sign it, it's inside cookies on the request object. You know what? This is unrelated to this and just distraction, but I'm looking at this and we've got this comment for 2 hours. I just want the code to be that. So we're going to pull in a library called MS that does that. Converts these like human readable strings to milliseconds. So you end up just saying MS 2 hours, and that's it. Let's go through login, make sure it works. Yeah, it does. Okay. So pop over to Kanban. This is done. say store Passetto token in a signed cookie. I'm interested to see what the rest of that cookie looks like. Okay, so you still have all this other stuff going on here. But I have to assume that you can't tamper with this and it still be valid or whatever. If it is, I kind of want to do some research and like play around with that some. So let's say like I wanted to change the path to, we want that to stay the same. Let's say I try to extend my session time to the 23rd or whatever. And hit done. Okay, so now this is 23rd. Can I still list messages? I can. So I'm gonna go look at that because that's even like if it really is literally just signing the actual like value or whatever, we don't really care about that at all. So I'll look into that after stream. It may be something we're configuring wrong or whatever, but it's pretty straightforward. That should have been all we needed. Create a Passetto middleware for automatically refreshing tokens. So normally what I do is basically you'd have like without the OpenAPI stuff, you'd have like your router stack. You put like public endpoints up above. There'd be a middleware call to authenticate, and then all your protected routes down below. And on that authenticate, I would attach another middleware to like refresh session or refresh token or whatever, so that as long as someone's active in the app, their session keeps going. And sometimes you'll implement things where like they'll still have like a max session. So like it's kind of like Kerberos tickets. They have like a max renewal time or whatever. So you can get a Kerberos ticket that's like 4 hour, good for 4 hours, but it's renewable for up to a week. But we don't have a way of like inserting middleware per se, but this code gets hit every time. So my thought was, for now, we'll just do this in the authenticate function or whatever. But let's see. Yeah, we'll just do it here, but this is something that, I'd like to do in a different place. So what we're going to end up doing is taking this code and just doing it, basically generating a new token that has the same payload that we decode. So we'll verify, and then we'll re-sign the payload to produce a new token, set a new cookie, and then settle these things. So actually, I could reorganize this a little bit. Okay. So the effect we should see here is everything continues working, but there are cookie changes every request. So if I hit here, uh-oh. Let's see, so we hit here, maybe. Let's do something and we'll set a breakpoint at call exceptions and try this again. Okay. Cannot access token before fit. Okay, that makes sense. that actually makes a lot of sense. Oh Lord, I've done it now. Actually curious. Need to look into this again. I thought this would skip a lot of the like error or exceptions you hit in the whatchamacallit. Can't words. In node code. I mean, maybe it's mad that it's doing it outside the try. That's what we were doing though, and it was just fine. Oh. Fresh token. I like the way that reads. Anyway, a little bit better. Okay, so we're still getting that. We done broke it. Res is not defined. So interesting that it's right. It is right. Holy God, stop. Okay, that's why we're not filtering out node modules. Maybe we should do that. Although sometimes I do like setting breakpoints in packages just to see what's up. But okay, so res isn't there. Or sorry, it's not in the authenticate method. So what we actually have to do is this shit. We can grab the response reference off the current request. This package just doesn't give us a response interface. So that's why we don't have it. But so this is a little bit awkward, but it should work now. Nope. Let's look at this before we do the debugger again. We're doing something wrong. MS isn't imported. Aha. Okay, so cookie, you see it changes every time. So now we're refreshing that. And if we looked at here, this is 8:57:13. This is 8:57:22. So this will be good for another 2 hours every time you make a request. Automatically refresh Passetto. Okay. Right. We're actually at almost an hour. I don't want to get into this. The nut of this is if you ever have a promise that you do not catch in a Node app, and it is allowed, it's never called all the way up, and it bubbles all the way up to the main process, it'll crash the process, and that'll be it. So let me see if I can make a little example of that real quick. We'll do const promise equals new promise, resolve, reject. This just throws an error. Flawed. I am out of here. Right. So this will always reject or throw some error. So if I come in here and I say promise dot then I want to do like console.log. I win. And I run node on that file. It should fail. And let's see. It failed, but not in the way I thought it would. Oh, it needs a semicolon here. Right. So imagine this is your Express app and you had this promise from hell that just threw an error out of nowhere and you didn't catch it. Then you get this unhandled promise rejection warning and then the error that was thrown. Now, if you come in here and do this, then, wait, we may not. Console.log error. Right? So when we catch it, when we actually do something with it, it doesn't do this unhandled promise rejection because we're handling it. But these will leak into your app no matter what. You can try really hard, but like imagine you pull in a dependency and they didn't do what they were supposed to, and you're not wrapping that in the best way. It can still happen. In most node deployments, you're going to be using something like PM2 to keep your app process running, or systemd if you're running Internet apps on Linux or whatever. You're going to have some kind of like daemon that makes sure that the node process is running, and if it dies, it restarts it. So a lot of times, if it's like a little edge case or whatever, you might see in your logs unhandled promise rejection warning. Like we have alerts set up to look for those. You might see them every now and then, like user hit a bad request and shit hit the fan. But you can get into a loop where these happen, and then your PM2 is like restarting the node process over and over and over again, and it just never goes anywhere. So you can also handle, the way you end up handling this is on your process, you'll do like, it's like unhandled promise rejection, I think. This is something you'll set up once in a project and then never touch again. So I haven't committed this to memory, but handled rejection, that's probably it right there, event. This is on window, but yeah, right. So unhandled rejection, and you can log it specifically. There's also uncalled exception, which is kind of similar to uncalled rejection or unhandled rejection or whatever it is. It's just another thing you can handle kind of at the process level to prevent the process from crashing. So if we come in and do this, and instead says, you know, we sent unhandled promise rejection to log file. Now when I run this, I don't get my, is it promise? This is process.on. Let's see, did I do this right? Probably not, right? Yeah. This should be, that should work. Oh, it does. I guess you need the capital R. But you can see this handles that, and our process doesn't crash anymore. If I take it away again, it crashes again. So this is basically the solution. You'll set like a global process on unhandled rejection and do it that way. In an Express app, honestly, you'd probably do you just rip what they're doing here and log the fact that something happened. So for right now, that's what we'll do in WAC. I think there is a way to like send a response out of this, but curious to see what those values would be for our little example here. Okay, so that's useless. It's actually useless. This is cool though. Well, I mean, there's probably a way to get like the line this ran at or whatever, but let's just say with reason. Yeah. So that's good enough. So log unhandled promise rejections. All right. That is everything. So on our backlog, we drug over this, have a stream on testing the API, and we're going to do that. We want to do that. The bulk of the work here is setting up test utilities for database testing. I really want to start working on this composition function stuff. So I kind of almost see more value in writing test utilities for getting the database into known state, seeding it, factories, that type of stuff. But then rather than testing our model layer or writing our own like HTTP tests for the API, instead writing tests for our composition function members, which will use Axios to talk to our API, which will exercise the model. So it's more of like a end-to-end test or whatever. And then we'll use those test utilities to get the database straight. So this will probably morph into focusing primarily on test utilities. So let's see. Still like all these notes. Okay, so the focus for this stream is going to be on building up a set of test utilities for staging the database. So staging and resetting the database with a few model tests to drive that out, right? So tomorrow we're not going to focus on like getting, 80-90% coverage over all our models and all that stuff. It's just going to be just enough to get the idea and play around with the database and make sure it's all good. This we're going to put back on the idea pile. Basically, we're going to have a day where we come in and add cores validation, bring in Helmet. We've already got cookie parsers, so I can take that off the list. But there's a handful of other ones we'll talk about, but that'll just be the focus of like probably save that for I'm only feeling like a 30-minute video one day. But then this is next on deck for sure. This is something I was mostly interested, or yes, most excited to kind of play around with, because this will be the first thing that like I'm going to start off. I am completely ignorant to. A lot of Vue3's reactivity stuff. Like I've done the reading, I understand conceptually what's going on, but there's not muscle memory in importing like ref and shallow ref and reactive and like all these things from the package and actually using them. So this will be the first time we'll do that. And it is interesting that it's going to be done outside of the context of a Vue component. We're going to be writing jest tests that test this reactive state exported out of or returned out of a composable function. So that'll be interesting. And the goal is at the end of that, we literally just plug that into view components that are really just there to be templating and wiring to our composable functions. So we'll see how that goes. We've also got to come back to our doodle password at some point. We're going to push that a little bit further though, but we're going to want a little more polish on that. But yeah, we're plugging along. So I think this is ready to go. Let's give it a once over real quick. Not a whole lot of changes today, but we did implement quite a few features. So go ahead and merge this. And that is it. So I'll be back on around 9-10 tomorrow. I meant to do that today and had some other things come up and couldn't get on until later. So we'll pick back up tomorrow. Last thing is, if you're watching this on YouTube, do feel free to come by. If you have any questions about the project or just web development in general, feel free to open a discussion. We can talk here. My email's on GitHub. If you want to email me, that's fine too. And otherwise, yeah, we'll keep on plugging in on it tomorrow. I'm gonna get out of here, get some sleep. I'll see y'all later.